person in this conference.
Very good morning to everyone. So today I'll be doing the Hindu analysis of 31st of October. I have shared the screen with you. So let's begin. Okay, so this is the editorial that is there in your page number 8. Page number 8. And what is this editorial talking about? Just a minute. Okay, so it says that the COVID-19 death toll in India getting it right. What does this mean? The COVID-19 pandemic extracted a heavy mortality toll across the world during 2020 and 2021, and this has been a huge global public health concern. Given the challenges in direct causal attribution of deaths to COVID-19 infection, the international public health community emphasized the need to measure pandemic impact in terms of excess mortality deprived by comparing observed mortality during the pandemic with expected mortality based on pre-pandemic trends. So if you see, just hold on for a second. Okay, so they are talking about um, excess mortality, then they are talking about observed mortality, and then they are talking about expected mortality. So there are three terms that we have talked about: excess mortality, then they are talking about observed mortality, and then they are talking about expected mortality. Now, what are they trying to say? See, what was the mortality that was, how much excess it was, or what was observed and what was expected. That means this was something which was expected when the pandemic was there, pre pandemic. This was an expected one. Observed mortality is the one that was observed, that means during the pandemic. And based on this, based on the factor of observed and expected, then you get how much excess it was. That means what amount it surpassed. Okay, gaps in ideally excess mortality estimation requires robust population-based mortality data from death registration system. So excess mortality is coming from your death registration system. India faced a big challenge in estimating excess deaths directly due to COVID 19, as death registration in India is still about 70%, which further varies widely across states and districts. Pandemic severity was particularly observed in India during the second wave in April June 2021. India's death registration data also does not give weekly or monthly mortality data, which is essential for excess death calculation. That means India's death registration data does not provide us the data which is based on weekly or monthly mortality rate. So this registration system, or you can say the death registration data coming from this system, does not provide us data from does not provide us data which talks about weekly or monthly data. So you see what is happening is that the data does not provide us data which is based on weekly or monthly. So based on this, what is happening is that the essential for excess data calculation is missed out. So that means if you are having weekly data and you are having monthly data regarding how much deaths have or how much mortality was there, So what is going to happen is, now based on this data, providers data, now based on this data you can calculate, and you can calculate what was the excess death calculation, what is the excess death calculation that occurred. Right. So since India is not giving us this registration data, we are not having this weekly data, we are not having this monthly data, hence we are not able to calculate this excess death calculation, the excess death that happened. To assess the mortality toll, independent investigator compiled mortality records from local offices of the government civil registration system in 14 states and 9 cities across India. Now, these were published in the media reports compiled in a data series. Various scientific teams utilized this and other available mortality data from the sample registration system. That means all the scientific teams that have been calculating, like what was the toll, what was the mortality rate, all that was coming from your sample registration system. So your death toll was coming from where? The sample registration system. Data from sample registration system and household surveys to develop modeled excess mortality estimates for India. COVID-19 related death estimates varied widely from one to another study. The highest was 4.7 million excess deaths in India during 2020 to 2021, using available local data as inputs for mortality model. Now, there has been intense debate and controversy around the likely plausibility of various mortality estimates for India, which have focused on the statistical methods and data assumptions employed for estimation. However, most of these studies could not overcome some crucial biases in the input data for the modeling exercises. Some studies are based on insufficient samples, while others have information bias at various levels. It is very likely that COVID related excess data deaths in India may have been overestimated. So, they are saying that it is very likely that COVID related excess data in India may have been overestimated. So what they are saying is that there are high possibility, that means the excess toll that has been counted can be overestimated figure. Set up a task force. The official CRS report. Now, what is this CRS report is telling you? Now, this is a CRS report is about what? Civil registration system. The official CRS report for 2021 is scheduled for release shortly and holds much promise for providing what? The best possible primary evidence. And what is that? However, it may also lead to new debates with variations such as improvement in reporting, delayed registration, and remaining deficiencies in data completeness across states, while sex and age are not considered and appropriately accounted for while inferring from this data. Now, therefore, it is necessary that the government should convene a task force of national experts in this field to attend this matter. This task force could be provided access to all the microdata from CRS, SRS, and other relevant data sources as necessary. Now, what is happening? Once equipped with all the available required information, the task force will be enabled to conduct a thorough analysis using standard statistical methods that utilize empirical data. That means all the data that is coming from CRS, SRS, and other sources. Now, all the data coming from here, what is happening is that they will provide you with the required information. And this required information will be done what? This will help in conducting a thorough analysis and finding what or using these empirical information, what is going to happen is, using the standard statistical methods, you are going to provide what? You are going to provide measures for excess mortality, or you are going to provide how this could be checked at different levels. So, based on this, what you are going to do is require information, empirical information to provide what? Based on this, you will be able to provide what? Measures. And measures with respect to what? To check the excess mortality. To check excess mortality, and this excess mortality by sex, age, at national level and at state level, or for that matter at fine. Now, district level intervention. So, going forward, the imperative for accurate district level mortality measure is urgent. For evidence based health action to tackle the quadruple burden from maternal and child health conditions, so infectious diseases, non communicable diseases, and injury. Hence, the output of such a detailed analysis would complete the debate on pandemic mortality in India. The analytical operation will establish capacity for subnational mortality measurement and also inform intervention to strengthen the local data quality. So, all in all, if you see, what is happening is that the issue was behind the kind of data we are receiving. The editorial is written by those two people who have been talking about that there are possibility that we are having these estimates which are telling us about the excess toll could be overestimated figure. So based on this, the point is that how are we going to have the accurate data, or how in future we can maintain the decent data on which we could be dependent on. So what is the author saying? That what you need to do is, output of such detailed analysis would complete the debate on pandemic mortality in India. The analytical operation will establish capacity for subnational mortality measurement and also inform intervention to strengthen the local data quality. So they are saying that strengthen the local data quality. Now, concomitantly, there is also an urgent need to strengthen what attribution of causes of death, either through medical certification or for physical attendant death, or through the use of retrospective interview methods for what? For household events. Now, taking together the activities of National Task Force is for data analysis, along with proposed initiative for data quality improvement, will vastly enhance the utility of the CRS for routine, local, and national mortality measurement in India. So, what is happening is that you need to enhance the utility of the data, so that what is going to happen? The measurements are or the measurements can be just a minute. hold on for a second. It has hanged actually. The screen has hanged. Okay. Measurements can be. The Israel-Palestine conflict is at bend point. The Israel-Palestine conflict. Now, we all are aware about the issues that are happening here in Israel between Israel and Palestine. So let's see the article has been written by the ambassador. So what is T.S. Tirmurti is talking about? So as I watch the television and see Gaza being pulverized, I'm informed that the apartment building I had lived in for 2 years in Gaza between 1996 and 98 was bombed and brought down to 2 weeks earlier. It was one of the taller buildings, and I knew it did not stand a chance anyway. I keep wondering what has happened to my friends in Gaza, especially my landlord, Abu Jakri, and his lovely family and children who made my life so much easier in a non family posting. Are you still alive? Now, what Hamas did to Israel on October 7th was unacceptable. It was a brutal terror attack. When I chaired the Counter-Terrorism Committee in the United Nations Security Council, one thing we all agreed on is that there can be no justification for terror. So nothing should justify. But does this make the Palestinian cause or the Palestinian fight against occupation by Israel for several decades any less justified? No, it does not. The UN Security Council resolutions 242 and 338 embodied the principle of land for peace. Israel should have ideally withdrawn from occupied lands in the West Bank, Gaza, and East Jerusalem. The three regions they are talking about. North Israel is about West Bank, it's about Gaza, East Jerusalem. Now, in return for peace. Now, which is security, recognition, normalcy, and peace for the peoples of the two states of Israel and Palestine. Interestingly, the revised 2017 Charter of Hamas too accepted a two-state solution based on the 1967 borders. Let us face it, the two-state solution alone can bring peace. A one state is a no state not solution. Israel, understandably, cannot let Hamas terror go unchallenged. The infrastructure built by Hamas in Gaza needs to be dismantled and the Israeli hostages released. For Israel, every Israeli life counts, but how much does a Palestinian life count for? Does it justify the killing of 8,000 plus Palestinian civilians in a mere 22 days? With children making up 40%, close to 9,600 casualties in 20 months of the Ukraine conflict. How many Palestinian lives are acceptable to this collateral damage? So, right now, here what we have seen is that the author is talking about the life of the Israelis is being counted, but how much the life of the Palestinians matter. So they are talking about the lives of the Palestinians and they are talking about how two state solutions could be accepted. dehumanization. To make such a pounding of Gaza acceptable, we have seen the West and their media equate Hamas with all 2.2 million Palestinians in Gaza so that they can be dehumanized and shown to be equally culpable. Dehumanization makes it easier to accept indiscriminate bombings without an outcry. But the West has also tried to equate the fight for the Palestinian statehood. Now, with this fight against Hamas to discredit the larger cause, this is dangerous. Another Western euphemism is the word humanitarian issues. Humanitarian assistance is to meet the basic needs when, for example, faced with collective punishment by Israel on the Gazans through a blockade of water, food, medicines, and electricity. Now, what is unfolding is a human tragedy. The killing of thousands of innocent lives and the mass displacement of 1.2 million Palestinians. There is not a humanitarian question here, but a question of humanity itself on the Arab world. While one can accuse the West of hypocrisy and double standards, what about the Arabs? That means we are talking about Israel, we are talking about Palestinians. What about the Arabs? So the author is now going to draw your attention towards the Arab world. That means all the issues that are pertaining to happen or they are taking place. So what impact does the Arab world is going to face or is it going to have on? While one can accuse the West of hypocrisy and double standard, what about the Arabs? Have they not been equally responsible for sidelining Palestinians? In the race of normalization with Israel, the Arab countries talked about Palestinian issue and even said that Israel has agreed to stop further annexation. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu actually said that land for peace has now been substituted by peace for peace. That means the agreements that we were having initially, it was talking about land for peace. Now it has been shifted to. And was of the opinion that the real issue in West Asia was now Iran and not Palestine. While Palestine statehood was a footnote in their normalization agreements with Israel, it is in danger of being reduced to a footnote to history. Now, even the present reaction of the Arab countries is to contain the popular support in the streets. Could not the Gulf countries have put their oil cloud to better effect before the Israeli ground operations started? Normalizing relations with Israel while ignoring the Palestinian issues will not give them security, especially when they are moving toward a liberal governance in the Gulf. Israel is no less complicit in this, of course. Successive governments have strived to make the two state solution more and more difficult. The current ultra nationalist government of Israel is only an extreme manifestation since it has openly declared its opposition to a two state solution. How else can one explain the fact that 250 Palestinian civilians were killed in the West Bank alone before October 7th, where no Hamas is present? So, if you see, what is happening is the cause is see all the issue is between the Israel and the Hamas. So Israel and Hamas are having the fight they want, but in process, what is happening is the lives of the Palestinians are at stake. And if you see, The author have just said that the region was comprising of Palestinians, where there was no Hamas. So how else can one explain the untrammeled expansion of settlements and creating facts on the ground with everyone watching helplessly this transgression of UNSC Resolution 2334? And even more fundamentally, was it not Israel that nurtured Hamas to undercut the Palestinian liberal organization and Fatah, and later President Yasser Arafat himself, uh, including by releasing the jailed spiritual founder of Hamas? So, what the authors want to say, that everyone knows that it was Israel who nurtured Hamas. And Hamas was nurtured by Israel for what reason? You know, to undercut, what Palestine liberal organization and the Fatah. And what happened was later President Yasser Arafat releasing the jailed spiritual founder of Hamas. So the irony of Israel-Palestinian history is that it is only when there is a major violent conflagration that the Palestinian issue receives attention. Then comes agreement followed by non-implementation. Now violence begins again and then agreement, and so the Kala Chakra moves on. The Yom Kippur War of 1973 led to the Israel-Egypt Camp David Accords in 1978 with the promise of Palestinian self-rule. So when nothing happened, Intifada came. Intifada came in 1987. Hamas came into existence. The Intifada led to the Oslo Accords of 1993 and 1985 with more promise of self-rule through the Palestinian Authority. Now, another round of backsliding, violence, and broken promises. Gaza is now widely acknowledged as the largest open-air prison. So here we are, what condemning Hamas, and rightly so, for this terror act, but not acknowledging the omission and the commission of this past, which is why UN Secretary General warned that such incidents do not occur in a vacuum. That means, I just did the analysis with you, and I told you that we are not counting to the fact that if Hamas is doing all this, then who was behind Hamas? Trying to actually safeguard Hamas. So it was Israel who was nurturing Hamas, and it was against the Palestinian Liberal Organization and the Fatah. So when it was Israel who was trying to nurture this Hamas, so this is what UN Secretary General is saying, that all these incidents are not happening in a vacuum. As the former Prime Minister of Israel, Ehud Barak, said in an interview, the Gaza ground operations will throw up issues such as retrieving of hostages, potential violations of international law by Israel, mounting civilian casualties, and erosion of international support, possible regional flare-up, and finally identifying who to pass the baton to when the operations are complete. Now, if operations prolong and all the indicators point to it dragging on, and the civilian casualties mount, and Gaza gets depopulated as refugees flow out, it will be an even bigger human disaster. It will potentially kill Palestinian statehood unless the Kala Chakra brings about something more tangible than false promises. Now, what is India's stand? While we have always stood for a two-state solution, India has rightly been wary of the fallout of terror attacks in Israel on its neighbor. Now, India is in synchronous with the Arab world in its normalization with Israel, with groupings such as I2 and U2. And what are those? See, what is India trying to say? Because India's relations with Israel is good, and at the same time, India's relation with Arab world is also good. So we have to maintain a very diplomatic stand on it. Why? Because we can't afford to lose Israel as a friend. So what is in that matter, India stands become important. So while we have always stood for a two-state solution, India has rightly been wary of the fallout of terror acts in Israel. Now, India has rightly been wary of the fallout of terror attacks in Israel on its neighborhood. India is in synchronous with Arab world in its normalization with Israel, with groupings such as I2, that is India, Israel, UAE, and United States. While we do not have a direct role, because this is what I said that we are nowhere directly involved, but these countries becomes important for us. So while we do not have a direct role yet, since it is time, the US and the West and the Gulf and the Arab world showed leadership first. Any regional fallout will affect us. Therefore, going forward, it is important for India to come out not just against terrorism but also more forcefully against the human tragedy playing out in Gaza. So, India's stand would be very important for a reason being that we have to go beyond terrorism and we should be very watchful, in fact, and watchful regarding what? Regarding the human tragedy happening in Gaza. So all the human tragedies that are happening in Gaza. In this, its proximity with Israel and US will only be an asset for us. Okay, so let's move on to the next one. Okay, now this is again a very beautiful article that's talking about stabilization of US-China ties because a lot has been said in the past about US and China. Why? Because both are very developed countries and they are again in the race. So this becomes important. Now, in this time of war, the quiet US-China dialogue is a significant factor for peace. From a situation where they were virtually not talking to each other, the two global powers appears to have reached a point where a presidential summit may be on the cards at the sidelines of the Asia Pacific Economic Cooperation Summit. Now, it may be too soon to use words like detentive, but that we could perhaps hope for is a tactical stabilization of the ties between the two of the world's leading powers. At the immediate level, Washington's ability to talk to China could promote restraint in West Asia. Now, China has undoubted influence on Iran, which virtually controls the Hezbollah in Lebanon. So, if you see the group Hezbollah, Lebanon. Now, the Hezbollah's entry into the war in Gaza could really complicate the situation in the region. Now, last week, what happened was when he visited the US, the first of the Chinese foreign minister since the pandemic and met the president over there. He is reported to have told what the US strategic community that the road to San Francisco will not be a smooth one. Now, Mr. Yang came in the wake of visit by US Secretaries of State, Treasury and Commerce to China. That means the Minister of US of the State, Treasury and Commerce. This came after this. Sorry. Okay. Okay. Fine. So when the Minister of US, sorry, or you can say the Secretariat of the US came to meet to China. After that, the China's foreign minister went to US. Now, till May, the Chinese military was refusing to take calls from the Pentagon with the sacking of Chinese defense minister. The American position in the latest issue, US National Security Advisor wrote, high levels and repeated interaction is crucial to clear up misperception about avoiding miscommunication, sending unambiguous signals, and arrest downward spiral that would erupt into a major crisis. Now, recalling that Mr. Biden and the Chinese president, what happened in the G20 summit last year, their competition, strategic communication was talked about in G20 summit the previous year. But the relationship went into a tailspin following the so-called spy balloon incident. The US is currently speaking from a position of strength. Now its economy is doing well, while that of China is stumbling. In foreign policy, the Biden administration has been able to revive what America's traditional alliance in Europe on account of Ukraine war and strengthen the hub and spoke alliance into a larger matrix covering the Indo-Pacific. Now, this involves what strengthened ties with India, upgraded ties with Australia, Vietnam, and Japan, and revived ties with the Philippines. But the Biden administration has not relented on the tough line it adopted towards Beijing and the outset. It maintained the Trump era tariff and initiated a policy of export restrictions designed to hobble the growth of Chinese high-tech industry. Its national security strategy of the last October said that China was the only competitor with both intent to reshape the international order and increasingly the economic, diplomatic, military, and technological powers to advance the objective. However, the administration said that it was keen to establish the guardrails to ensure that the relationship did not go off track, but this did not assuage China. A sense of bitterness was evident in March when she unusually named China for having contained and suppressed us in all round way. Now, the US continues to tighten its export controls to Beijing and is taking tough on China and Philippines standoff at Second Thomas Shoal. Now, its approach was identified by the Treasury Secretariat. Just a second. Okay, China involving 3 points: national security of US and its allies, economic relationship based on fair competition, and cooperation on urgent global challenges. Now, China believes that US remains a formidable military power, but it is inevitable decline. But it would like to maintain the facade of cooperation and peaceful coexistence rather than deal with competitive and confrontational posture. Military and politically, China has sought to establish its regional dominance in the Western Pacific, but its neighbors such as Japan, Philippines, and Vietnam, which were backed by the US. Now, what is US China relations are crucial How are they? So, US-China relations are crucial in dealing with global issues such as climate change or crises such as the one in the West Asia. But the climate of truculence is hampering effective cooperation. It is hoped that Biden-Xi summit can begin the process of improving China-US ties and putting their bilateral relation on an even keel. Now, the relation will retain a strong competitive tenor, but that should not prevent the US and China from making it problematic. Okay, so let's move on to the next article. Easing the transport of cargo by the railways. Now, there is an immediate need to develop common user facilities at cargo aggregations and dispersal points in mining clusters, industrial clusters, and large cities. As the knowledge of these clusters rests with the states, collaboration with the state government is of utmost importance. Now, this is the second of the three parts series of the article on Indian Railways. Now, the railways has been one of the more cheaper modes of transportation for moving bulk cargo. So, the cheapest mode of transportation is railway for what? For moving cargo. The government has therefore realized that it needs to be supported with reduced overall logistic costs and schemes for what to improve green mobility. Identifying infrastructure investment in the sector as a key thrust area, the government of India has formulated two policies. Now, what are those two policies? One is your PM Gati Shakti, and this is your national master plan. And the third one is your NLP, that is your National Logistics Policy. The PM Gati Shakti aims to bring synergy to create a seamless multimodal transport network in India with NMT, that is a National Master Plan, employing technology and IT tools for coordinated planning of infrastructure. Now, the NLP, that is your National Logistics Policy, focuses on building a national logistic portal and integrating platform of various ministries. Not many major policy components and details are available in the governmental websites on PM Gati Shakti. In reference to the Indian Railways, the Department for Promotion of Industry and Internal Trade's website mentions three things: integration of postal and railway networks, one station, one product, and introduction of 400 Vande Bharat trains without anything about increasing the IR share in moving cargo. That means based on these, introducing 400 Vande Bharat, etc. What is happening is this shall lead to increasing Indian Railways share. Indian Railways share on with respect or on to what? With respect to moving cargo. The Indian Railways has taken some initiatives in bulk cargo arena. It relaxed block rate movement rules to provide a facility to load from to multiple locations, permitted mini rakes, introduced private freight terminals, and relaxed condition in private sidings. The Gati Shakti terminal policy has eased the stipulation for the operation of these terminals and progressively all the PFTs. And the private sidings are being converted into GCST, that means Gati Shakti terminals. Gati Shakti terminals. So the Indian Railways has also partnered with the freight operators in recent years, encouraging them to invest in the wagons for the movement of their cargoes, thus helping in the induction of more than 16,000 privately owned wagons to facilitate what specialized traffic like automobiles and fly ash. Now, while it is early to judge the impact of these initiatives, the Indian Railways share in bulk cargo continues to decline. Some decline is expected as production becomes more decentralized. To offset this, Indian Railways should reduce non-price barriers and distribute transaction costs associated with it to as many customers as possible. A railway siding is a capital intensive, high cost proposition, and only large industries can manage them. This increased the logistic cost and hence the reluctance to patronize the Indian railways. For example, in the cement sector in 2017 to 18, what happened was that 33 plants with less than 1 million ton annual capacity had a production share of 6.5%, but the share in rail loading was 3.8%, whereas plants with more than 2.5 MT annual capacity with a production share of 57%, the rail share was 69.5%. Now, similar is the picture for many private mines, mini steel plants, and agricultural markets. There is an immediate need to develop toward common user facilities at cargo aggregation and dispersal points in mini clusters, industrial clusters, and large cities. The knowledge of these clusters rest with the states and not the Indian Railways or other central ministries, and thus collaboration with the state government is a sine qua non. The relationship of the Indian Railways with the state government has been a sort of a patron-client relationship. Why I am saying that it has been a patron-client relationship? Why? Because many states regularly demand rail lines in their areas. A change in this attitude is necessary in order for the railways to participate in the planning of industrial clusters and mines in cities or regions. If it has to increase its share movement of cargo, that means whenever there is demand of railways from the state side, so Indian Railways is there fulfilling their demand. So the author is trying to say that if you want to increase the contribution of the railways towards the mining regions or towards industrial regions, what you need to do is you need to free down the railways so that they could be associated with the movement of cargo works in these regions. So for that, state need to release them from their own work. The environmental concern, what are those? The Indian Railways must also look at new commodities like fly ash. That means, you are using coal. So, what could Indian Railways do? They could look towards fly ash category. Ministry of Environment and Forest started issuing notifications since 1999 for the complete utilization of fly ash. In 2021, the production was 232 MT and the utilization was 214 MT. The Indian Railways never realized the potential and approved many power plant sightings without fly ash loading facilities, rendering it to be minor players in its transportation, and it must proactively correct the storm. Another necessity to is for the Indian Railways to encourage and liberalize the design of new vehicles amenable to higher and efficient loading to deal with new commodities. Finally, the environmental considerations are constraining loading by the Indian Railways. As per recent government regulations, environmental clearance for rail loading and unloading facilities has been made mandatory, but the same has not been imposed on road loading and unloading facilities. Now, these restrictions have made some users move cargo by road due to high transaction costs involved with environmental clearance. Such instructions should be mode agnostic based on quantity of cargo loaded and the potential of environmental degradation. So otherwise rail loading will be hampered, giving fillip to more environmentally polluting road transport. That means what is happening is that the author is of the opinion that cargo loading has this capacity of polluting the environment, and polluting the environment when if we are using what road transport. So what could be done is that if we are switching to rail loading, this could be checked. The expansion of settlements into flood prone areas. Now India's urban area have been flooding more and more often, destroying lives and livelihood. Yet according to a study led by World Bank and published in Nature, flood risk in many cities is rising because they are expanding into flood prone areas. According to the paper, since 1985, human settlement in flood-prone areas have more than doubled. Experts say that finding, yeah, experts, just a minute. Experts say the findings spotlight the risk of unsustainable urbanization in India. The study also found that middle-income countries like India have more urban settlements in flood-prone zones than low and high-income countries. How is India at risk? India isn't among the 20 countries whose settlements are most exposed to flood hazards, but it was the third highest contributor to global settlement after China and US, and also third after China and Vietnam among the countries with new settlements expanding into flood-prone areas. So, if you see, India has been in third ranking regarding what the settlements are expanding, contributing towards flood-prone areas. Expanding, contributing towards flood-prone areas. Okay, so all from 1985 to 2015, Gautam Han, a researcher at IIHS, said that this means India is at significant risk of flood-related problems that could worsen in coming years. Um, what else? Now, Raj Bhagat, a geoanalyst, said that the data in the study from a database may not have the granularity required for studying the flood-prone areas in our urban areas and peri-urban areas. Now, he had estimated that Bangalore floods that year costed this much. In 1901 to 2022, the city population grew from around 1.6 lakh to more than crores. To accommodate these people, the city expanded, but new localities overlooked the topography. Who are most affected? Uh, the geography of the environmental risk is also the geography of the informal low income housing. Informal housing in cities is on the land that is vacant and less desirable, so that they are not immediately driven off. So they often lie in low lying flood prone areas. Now, According to Dr. Bhan, an important reason why urbanization has expanded into flood prone area is that we don't have the governance processes to say, look, this kind of development is environmentally unsustainable. When environmental regulations are applied to new constructions, they are often applied only to big infrastructure projects and not to medium and small scale modification of localities. This contradicts the notion that certain localities are more flood prone and that flooding and flood risk are locality level issues. He invoked the examples of a rise in ecotourism resorts on forest land and the construction of large structures, including the government building and even religious structures. Now, what is to be done? As cities continue to expand, Dr. Bhan cautioned that we can no longer avoid expanding into flood prone areas. Market forces tend to push expansion into flood prone areas, but recognizing what these areas are and that we are actually expanding into them is the first step towards unsustainable urban planning that addresses the risk. Some forms of adaptation and necessary, said Dr. Khan, that they need to differentiate between the low income residents and unauthorized structure erected for the elite. Every city needs to do a proper scientific mapping of the flood prone areas. Dr. Bhan added that urban governments need to make housing in such areas more flood resilient and protect low income housing. He gave the example of riverside settlement that use still houses like those used by Mishing and the Mia community along the Brahmaputra. So they are of the opinion what make housing flood resilient. And this shall help what the low income people housing, so low income housing. And they are given the example of the regions of Brahmaputra. Okay, so this was the editorial. I have done four editorials with you, and they have been extremely important in today's current affair. So thank you so much. I shall be seeing you.